Welcome to Season 3 of the Knowledge from the Couch podcast. More history, more people, more of the stuff that got you here in the first place. Thanks for listening.
1, 2, 3, jump!
Welcome into the Knowledge from the Couch podcast, episode number 49. Today is a very special episode as I finally did it. I finally did it. I got a guest on the show, and so now when you listen to this episode, you don't just have to hear these dulcet tones, these or this, because I know how to make a word plural or singular. You don't have to listen to just this voice. You can listen to another voice talking to me about this, that, and, of course, the other thing. Today's episode, we talk about Agnes of Dunbar, a Scottish lass who was a real badass, defending her castle from the likes of the English folk. But, interestingly enough, I would say that the episode you're about to hear is only about half about Agnes of Dunbar. The rest is just talking and shooting the shit and getting to know my guest. My guest today is my little young sister, Amber Steinhauser. She is she gets the honor of being the first guest on the Knowledge from the Couch podcast, and I think it turned out pretty well. But if you're not into just, half an hour straight of just us talking to each other and having a fun time and having a blast, then skip ahead to the story part. But I would encourage you to listen because it is fun. I had a lot of fun doing this episode, and I think she had a lot of fun doing this episode. And like I always say, if you are interested in coming and recording one with me, let me know, and we can make that happen. So I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. I'll let you listen to the episode. It's long enough as it is. Guys, today's episode number 49 of the Knowledge from the Couch podcast, featuring Amber Steinhauser. We talk about Agnes of Dunbar. Guys, stick with us. Guys, let's talk a little bit about Agnes, the Countess of Dunbar, or Agnes Randolph, as she is more commonly known to the old crazy Scottish people. And of course, I have to talk a little bit about this episode in general being one of finally I did it. It took me like 50 fucking episodes, but I did it. I said I was going to do it since probably episode 6. I'm like, I'll get people on this fucking show. And then 9 months later, I finally got somebody on the show. So finally, you don't have to only listen to my voice. You get to listen to a person's voice who is not only not male, like yours truly, she's also related to me, and that's fun because I can't get any guests that are famous people, so I will get my friends and family aboard. But she is my youngest sister. She is probably the smartest member of my family, so if you think I'm smart, just wait.
Oh, lies.
And yeah, I'll just let her talk a little bit about herself so you can hear somebody else's voice besides mine. Welcome, my sister Amber Steinhauser to the program. How are you?
Oh,
what up?
Man, I'm great.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, because the people know everything about me. I've gone on literally, I don't even know how many hours of podcasting I've done. 50 fucking
many,
hours.
Many, at least.
More than any person should that doesn't make like any money doing it. A little bit now because of the Patreon, but basically no money still. You're talking into the equipment.
I might still be the only.
There's two now.
Patreon.
I have two patrons
is there two?
now. Aaron
Nice.
is one now too.
Good.
So he'll be one of my other guests. You'll hear him next week. He's coming over next week to do
awesome.
one. So, yeah. So, tell the people about you, and just so they get a general viewing of you. Like, what do you do? What are you about? What do you like? What is interesting? All that kind of fun stuff. Go.
Okay, well, as Kyle stated, I'm his youngest sister. And while it's a different person, you'll probably hear that me and Kyle kind of talk the same, tell stories the same, have the same cadence. So, I mean, you're welcome for having a same but different person. Yeah, my name's Amber. I don't know. Am I that interesting? I don't know what to tell people about myself.
Here's the funny part about being interesting. I've always, it's really difficult, and because you and I are raised in a similar way, just a few years apart, it's very difficult to talk about yourself. That's I've always found it difficult for me to talk about myself. Funny story. When I first started this podcast, I also I wanted to do it because I like podcasting in general. I've always enjoyed the art of radio, and podcasting is a fun way to do something like that without having to actually work at a station or be beholden to anybody. Like I can just do this on my own whenever I want to. And it was funny because when I first started it, not only did I want to do it because it was interesting to me, but also I was like, now I'll have something interesting to fucking tell people about myself. Like,
icebreaker.
Did you hear? Not only do I do everything like whatever I just told you, but also I have a fucking podcast. Whoa, that's super interesting. And funny story, I don't know if any of my nursing friends are listening, or my pharmacy friend Marnie, who really likes the show. But one of the things I mentioned in my interview before I got my job is that I have a podcast, and I found it fun, and I still got hired. So I'm the only person in history that I know of who used his podcast in his interview, and it worked somehow.
Nice.
So that was part of the reason I started doing it. But in the end, like, everybody's got stuff that is interesting about them, even if they don't think it is. So, when I'm thinking about my stuff, it's like, oh, I like this and that. And, just once you start going to the details of your life and why you like stuff, the interesting stuff starts to fly out a little bit more.
I'd say probably the biggest thing that probably all of my family knows about me is that I bake all the time. I have always wanted to do that. I have this like very idealistic dream of like someday having my own bakery in like Germany or Denmark or something. But yeah, I've grown up baking, and that's super interesting to me. I love it. I love reading about yeast in bread.
Yeast is fun.
It's super fun.
It's a mold. It's super fun. It's a fun guy. Literally, it is. Yeast is a fun.
It is a fun guy.
Yeah, I would say your top skill set of all the things that I know about you is probably your ability to bake. Why did you get into baking? Before we talk about everything, we're just going to expose about each other. We're just going to go exposition. We're just going to start talking. So hopefully you enjoy a lot of bullshit about two people you probably don't know that well happen. Anyway. It's going to happen. What made you choose baking over like different types of like preparing food, like cooking, in certain styles or whatever it is? Like, what brought you into baking as the thing that you were most interested in and wanted to continue getting better at?
I think because it's so fun and it's so varied. I know a lot of people are like, oh, cooking is great, and there's so many different styles, but like, my God, there's so many different kinds of baking. There's so many different kinds of breads. I literally have a book, like a German book about just bread, and then a book about just dumplings. But
human civilization has lived very much on bread ever since we decided to stop being nomads and settle down. All of a sudden, the boom in taking all the grains we would grow and making them into stuff that we eat. Baking's been a pretty integral part of people's existence, probably even more so than actual complex cooking.
definitely.
Because, I mean, what the fuck did people do 10,000 years ago to cook? They just, like, threw a bunch of shit in a pot, and they're like, we're eating this now.
I was like, well, this is good.
Or they just, like, cooked some shit over a fire. Like, I guess this is, like, our food now, you know? But baking was always been kind of an art, you know, when you look at medieval times and cities and stuff. Like, the baker was an important
they
position.
were an integral part because, you know,
the blacksmith and the horse stable person and the baker, like, they were important pieces of the community.
Candlestick maker.
And the candlestick maker.
They were important parts because, you know, back in the day, in medieval times and before, people were fucking busy because they literally had to do everything. Make shit, tend to things, have livestock, and, I mean, that was your main source of food because meat was fucking expensive.
Yeah, because you had to raise animals and then just kill those animals, and we didn't have industrial farming techniques yet, so we couldn't just raise 1 billion cows.
Refrigeration wasn't a thing.
Yeah, refrigeration wasn't a thing, so it's like, well, if we're going to kill this animal now, we have to make sure we just get the best we can out of it, and if we want to keep it, we just have to put like 90 pounds of salt on it, and I guess it'll be fine. Oh, by the way, we all die at 40 because we had heart attacks from the fucking meat that we ate. You weren't getting heart attacks from the bread that the baker was making, and nobody's getting diabetes back then either because nobody could eat enough to get diabetes.
Right?
Nobody was fat back then except for super rich people because they could afford to be fat, and everybody else was working too hard and dying too young to ever get the beatus. But you know that's a thing now. Anyhow, so like when I think about baking, you know, and on the surface, it seems really simple. It's like, turn on your heating source, like your oven or whatever you're using, or kiln or whatever, and put a bunch of ingredients in a bowl, mix it up in the bowl, pour it into some sort of mold or something, and then just like watch it. So on the surface, it seems like for some stuff, and probably when it comes down to it, a few things are that simple. Of course, I mean, baking is like everything. It's got a range of incredibly simple to incredibly complex. Yeah. And then when you talk about the incredibly complex, it's like, holy shit. Like, I feel like baking is like cooking is this like much more like fly by the seat of your pants sort of active thing because you're playing with the heat and doing stuff and adding this and that. Whereas baking is like this mathematical, like,
it's chemistry,
calculated chemical, like, okay, I do this and then I fold this and then I put this little bit in and I kind of concoct my brew, my potion, and then once that's all done, I start to bake it. But then I might do this on the side. I might do this other thing. And it's like, in the end, it can get really tempest. Like, you can fuck up a bake
oh my gosh,
very easily.
So
and I think
easy.
that's why a lot of people don't bake, because
they have one kind of fuck up and they're like, well, I can't
and
bake.
baking's hard and it takes longer. Like, you can saute and cook shit and actually like not fuck it up. Like, you can cook pretty reasonably good meals without being an expert by any means.
Yeah.
And it's really easy. It's like, get a pan, like put some oil in it, cut up some stuff, do this and that, some spices, and like, boom, you made something. People are like, I'm a good fucking cook.
Done. Yeah.
And then, but baking is like, oh my God, this takes so long to do. And now I have to like do this. Now I have to wait. And it might not even be good when I get it done, but I spent 3 hours doing this, so I hope it's good. And then it might not be, and you're like, well, I fucking suck at baking. And, well, maybe you do, but you haven't practiced very much yet. So.
And there's a lot of chemistry involved. And I think about that. I do bake for a living. That's my main source of income.
Yes.
And while I do have recipes that I have to follow because it is a corporation.
Yeah, it is a thing that you bake for a large. You're not like you said, a baker of your own volition.
It's not a mom and pop shop.
Yeah, you work for a company. You bake the things that people come in and buy for their events and stuff. But like you're saying, you have your own twist sometimes.
Oh yeah, like sometimes I'll see a recipe and like, I don't understand why this is being put in this way. Like, I'll change something. For example, I'll put pineapple in first because that's literally my only source of acid in the recipe, and I know that my only source of leavening is in this one spice pack all mixed in, and I need the time for that to interact and help it build so that when I whip up the gluten and that starts to develop, then it can have this interaction and make it so that it gets nice and soft and tender and it rises in the oven instead of being dense.
It's tough chemistry because it's a lot of chemistry that happens in the absence of heat. And more from like the friction and movement of like mixing rather than like just like cooking is chemistry. Also, everything's chemistry. When it comes down to it, this is a total aside. This is just life in general. But everything like you're hearing from us, we exist. The beers we're drinking, during this. It's all chemistry. Everything is
Yeah.
chemistry that happens. Everything is made of a chemical makeup, and it interacts with something chemically, and then it's an equation, and then something comes out. That's all it is.
Yeah,
But
pretty
like
much.
with cooking, that kind of happens actively on the top because you're introducing heat, and that heat is a catalyst to chemistry working. Like the hotter something is, the faster it
Yeah.
moves.
And there are some like finer points, like
Yeah.
say you're
Oh
making,
yeah. Not
say
to
you're
say that
making-
cooking's
exactly.
easy by any means.
Say you're
but
making
it's
like
different.
a roast and you're like, well, I'm going to do this slow and I want to add just a little bit of acid to tenderize the meat, break it down without adding a ton of salt.
So what would you do in that situation?
I would add. I actually just gave Mom. I literally just came up with some shit out the top of my head.
Our mother.
Our mother. And Mom's like, "What do I do with this pork butt?" I'm like, throw it in the crock pot. Throw some coconut aminos in there. Throw some orange juice in there.
The orange juice for the
Yep.
acidity
Yep.
acidity of the situation.
Yep.
Mhm.
The coconut aminos for some umami.
Yes. The elusive sixth flavor Japanese word umami is
Umami.
savory.
Savory.
See, here's another thing. Now that we get savory, sorry that we still haven't got to the story after I can't see like 12 minutes we've been doing it already. I don't give a shit. We're just gonna
Right?
keep going.
Fuck it. They can skip ahead.
When I think of like things that are umami and then things that are like the perfect combination of like sweet and savory,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of people like sweet and savory is becoming more popular, I think, in
Yeah,
food
For
these
sure.
days. But a thing that has been sweet and savory in the state of Nebraska, do you know where I'm going with this?
Oh, I know exactly where you're going.
Chili
with this. And
cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
It's people are like, why does that work together? And it's like
Oh, it's
you
so
have the
good.
cinnamon roll. It is sweet, but not
Mhm.
overly sweet.
No.
It also has a texture because most cinnamon rolls have like an icing or a like kind of a gluey, sticky sort of
Yeah.
situation. So you have sweet and you have a little savory in that on its own.
Yeah, the bread itself is just a little.
A little savory. And then you have chili, which is like all savory. It's
Mhm.
beans, it's tomato based, it's meat. It's like, that is all savory. So you put the two together and they work.
Yeah.
Like, we're not telling you to take a cinnamon roll
And like,
and like
rip
dip
it up and
dip
put
it in
yeah,
fucking chili. It's like you eat
a bite.
Yeah, you have the cinnamon roll with your chili, just like you would have fucking oyster crackers with your chili.
Yeah.
Like you have like this, and you have this other thing. Like that's the whole point of it. And I don't understand why people are like, "Oh, it doesn't make sense." It's like, you don't
Plus-
fucking make sense.
Right.
It's
People
it's
get
sweet and
angry
savory,
about
bitch.
it.
That's what it is. People do get angry, and I get angry because
In
of their
defense of it.
because of their anger.
And it's funny because it's a perfect flavor combination.
Mm-hmm.
Because not to get all gourmand on you,
Please be gourmand.
but you've got the cinnamon.
Yep.
And you know what cinnamon really loves? Spicy and savory.
Yep.
And
That's why cinnamon.
chili
That's
is-
why Big Red fucking gum tastes like spice to you, even though it isn't, because it's
Yeah.
cinnamon. Like
Yeah.
cinnamon goes very well with the things that would take in spice, like
Oh, yeah.
tomato based things take in spice very well. That's why every fucking hot sauce basically tastes in some form
yeah.
like vinegary,
Mhm.
acidic tomato,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what goes with that
Yeah.
that capsaicin fucking the spicy molecule. Chemistry. We're only on chemistry. We should have done a show about
Just
chemistry.
Right.
We'll save that one for another time.
Another time.
So I'm trying to think of what else we could bullshit about for whatever, but I think maybe we should start to anything else you want to tell anyone else. You like to bake,
I love
and
to bake.
obviously that's come out in the last 10 minutes that you like to bake, that you know how to bake.
Yeah.
Give me your top 5 favorite things to bake. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just like, what do you like to make the most? Like, what are your favorite things to just whip up for either occasions or for your own stuff? What do you like to do?
So, of course, number one is cinnamon rolls.
Cinnamon rolls.
Because Grandma Kathleen made them, like 3 fucking times a week?
Yeah, Grandma,
All the
our
time.
grandmother up in our original hometown up in northern Nebraska, she made cinnamon rolls, and everybody has their own sort of affinity for their own like grandmother or parents stuff,
Yeah.
because you'll eat that and you'll go out and eat like something else that is the same thing. You're
And
like, well,
it's
this
never as
is
good.
not as good, or
No.
I don't like this. It just is different. And so Grandma made a particular type of cinnamon roll, and we were just raised on that, and she just made the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And then like that's how our mom makes them now as well, and then must be how you make them.
Oh, yeah, that's how I make them.
Yeah.
And it's great. And that's where I got my love of baking from, was
Yeah.
Grandma Kathleen.
Mhm.
Because I'd go over and there would always be dough raising in the kitchen, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how she would keep me busy. So I'd go in and punch it down and roll it out, pretend I was doing stuff.
Making noodles
Yep.
for
oh
chicken
my
noodle
gosh.
soup,
It was just
homemade noodles.
I was just regaling people at work about that today.
Yeah, you've never had real good chicken noodle soup till you have like a hearty, thick, doughy kind of, not doughy, but like the thick consistency of like a dumpling almost in noodle form in your chicken noodle soup. Like that watery, thin bullshit. Like it just doesn't, it's nothing.
That's not soup.
Yeah, it's just, well, even like those noodles and stuff, you're like, what is this? It's just like this slippery
they're
nonsense.
Slimy.
Yeah.
And
You want the real thick, like you make it, you roll it out, you cut them up, and you put them into this, the water. You actually boil them yourself and everything, and you make them your own noodles, and it makes for a good soup.
Good soup.
Cinnamon rolls number one.
Pumpkin bread.
Pumpkin bread,
which is always delicious. I fucking love everything pumpkin.
I have an affinity for pumpkin as well, for sure.
Probably then after that, pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie, of course.
I am the designated pie maker.
The greatest of all pies. Fucking fight me. Don't at me. Pumpkin pie is the best pie ever. Fuck you if you think otherwise.
Or do at me, and I'll I'll tell you exactly what
Find
it's
me
about.
at Kyle Steinhauser on Twitter. I'll say it at the end of the show again. But fucking at me if you think pumpkin pie is not number one. If you think apple pie or cherry pie is better, I'll fight you. Come to my house. We'll do a podcast, and then I'll fight you afterwards about it. I love pumpkin pie so much.
It's the best. And
it's the best.
And fuck you if you like pecan.
I like pecan pie.
I mean, it's good, but
it's not as good as pumpkin pie. I don't care what you say.
I don't understand how people have
or pecan pie.
Pecan pie.
Whatever. Yo, pecan pie. Boy. Some of that pecan pie, boy. Yeah. It's good, but it's its own thing. It's kind of sweet. And it's caramely and it's
all sugar.
It's sugar.
It's all
it's a southern type of pie. Like if you think of a southern pie, like a pecan pie, boy, it is. I mean, apple pie is too, but like pecan pie is just it's like so sweet tea in pie form.
Yeah, God. Okay, so we've got cinnamon
rolls,
pumpkin bread,
and pumpkin pie.
I love making. I'm gonna drop the Scandinavian accent on you. I love making kringle.
Kringle. How many umlauts are in this word? None. How many weird letters that the English language doesn't use are in this word, like an A and an E smashed together?
It's literally Kringle.
KR. Spell it again.
KRI.
N.
GLE.
Kringly.
Exactly.
Kringle.
Kris Kringle. People, that's what, like, Christmas comes, they're like, oh, it's Kringle. It's Kris Kringle. It's Kringle.
Kringle. What is that exactly?
It is a pastry, and it's a pain in the ass to make.
What kind of pastry? Like, what is its flavor base?
Its flavor base is almond.
Almond. So it's
like
not super sweet.
No.
It's kind of a muted.
Pretty much.
Kind of flavor. Is it a little bit, is there any sweetness? I'm sure there's some sugar that goes into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Recipe-wise.
You make a filling of almond paste and sugar and eggs, and you fill the dough with that, and that's your sweetness. You sprinkle sugar and almonds on top.
It sounds very Nordic.
It is.
Very simple,
it's
easy.
Very, very Danish in its execution, which is also very French, because the French have such an influence on Danish baking.
It's true. It is true.
You know, it's
pretty close to France, Denmark. So it's not surprising that at some point in history they probably interacted with each other a little bit.
And it's funny because it's really only Denmark. Sweden and Norway are like, fuck you.
Well, yeah, they have that little waterway in between them. That it's so funny when you think about Scandinavia. Finland is not Scandinavia.
No, it is
even
not.
though most people kind of throw it in there.
It's Nordic.
It's Nordic. Yeah, there
Baltic.
are many terms. Yeah, it's almost more Baltic. Like, it's more like Lithuania and Estonia than...
God, Estonia, what a great fucking country.
It's more like that and Russia, really,
than
it is like its buddies, Sweden. I had 1.5 beers. Sweden, Norway, and even Iceland a little bit, although Iceland is its own thing because it's been so isolated that it's, its version of... Icelandic is closer to Old Norse than any of the other ones because they've modernized and they've cross-culturated where Iceland's like, we're alone, so we're the same. But it's so funny when you think of, like Norway and Sweden are so different despite being next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Denmark and Sweden are actually very similar, even though they're kind of far away from each other. Like
And
they're across the way,
yeah.
but they were like a kingdom together.
Yeah.
And Norway was part of that as well.
Yeah.
And Finland's like, we're different.
Pretty much.
On the border, they're similar because I think there's a weird, I don't even know what you would call it. There's like a weird mixed language where it mixes Swedish and Finnish on
there's
the
a mixed
on the
language.
border.
There's indigenous people called the Sami people.
Yes, which I believe Simo, my man, he
Simo,
was
Heya.
Yes, I said it wrong the whole time.
Hey.
And Heya. It's got that one has umlauts in it.
It's got
I had to figure out the alt code, whatever it was, like alt 0154, I think, to make like umlauted A's.
Yeah.
So I could be properly spell it correct. Didn't say it correct, but at least I spelled it right. But he is a Sami. I think he was I don't know if he was indigenous, he was full blood Sami, but he was like, obviously that was a big part of his and he killed a lot of people. Yeah, he was pretty badass.
He was pretty amazing.
That was my number one most downloaded episode. Is that one? People like that guy. He's just a little farmer guy, and he's like, well, I got to murder people now. And then he just did that, and he was like, I'm gonna live till I'm fucking like 98 years old, even though half my face got blown off. I don't care.
God,
like, super good guy.
He was amazing.
I'm sure that it's unsubstantiated, but I'm sure he came up with the Finnish baby boxes. Probably just Simo. He was like, what if we just send boxes to all these mothers? And then all of our SIDS will go down and all of our babies are super healthy. It's his idea. It's unsubstantiated. I don't know if that's true, but you heard it here. It probably is. I don't know. That guy's a badass. But yeah, so what about these Sami people?
The Sami people are very interesting. You'll probably find more of them in Finland than in Sweden, but there are a lot of them in Sweden.
Are they
very
indigenous?
northern.
As in similar to like an Inuit type in
kind of like
Canada.
Siberians or like
Inuits a northern kind of indigenous type of tribe more.
They're traditionally
than white people.
Exactly, they're traditionally reindeer herders.
Ah, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something very northern, just like Inuit typically are like whale hunters and stuff like, or seal hunters, and like Native Americans like would herd bison and stuff. There's a thing, there's reindeer, because of course it is. It's like basically Christmas land up there, so of course the reindeer have to be a big part of it.
Yeah, but the language is completely different from Finnish. It's completely different from Swedish. It's
a native language.
It's completely different. It's real interesting, But yes, people, Finland is not Scandinavia.
Although, honestly, even though they're not, and they will happily say that they are not, I really think that country is like riding that fucking wave of like, we're also a Nordic country. Come look at and visit our country too. Because I think Finland has a lot to offer just as much as Sweden and Norway and Denmark do, and Iceland. Although Iceland's a huge tourist country too these days. Iceland's really boomed like crazy. But a lot of people are visiting these countries now, especially because they're so nice. Mm-hmm. They're so clean. The people are really friendly.
I would love to go to Finland.
Yeah, and like Helsinki is a really cool town, apparently. I mean, they drink like gallons of coffee a day. It's just like their thing, you know. Yeah. But they'll definitely tell you, hey, we're not Sweden, we're not Norway, but they're not going to say no to you coming in, like spending your money there because you think it's also part of their thing. Like, come here.
Like,
that's fine.
Definitely come here.
Most of our country you don't want to go to because it's only snow.
Yeah.
But the bottom part, where Helsinki is, you can come here and hang out with us. And
don't let the Dudesons fool you and make you think it's all fun. It's not.
Listen to our death metal and drink our fucking gallons of coffee. And get in a sauna with us because that's what Finnish people do.
They've got a great rock scene.
I feel like the guy, that's a huge part. I'm not a huge like death metal or metal fan in general, but like all those countries up there are like way into it. I think it's the perpetual darkness and winter that brings it out in them
for sure. Children of Bodom, one of Finland's best bands ever. They're pretty fucking great.
They're just going insane.
Alexi Laiho is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And you can at me, but I'm not on Twitter, so fucking at me wherever you think you can.
You're on Instagram, right?
I am.
At her there. We'll talk about at the end of the show where you can find her, but at her there and tell her that whatever fucking band she just said to me that I don't remember isn't the best metal band that you've ever heard in your entire life. And also don't at her about any K-pop. Because she'll see there's boy. Oh my God, let's talk about Korean pop.
Oh my God.
Boy. So that's the thing. Like, see, now we've been talking so long, and all of a sudden your interests just like come out because you love to bake, and you love
languages,
which is another thing I was going to mention because you're not technically any more lingual than English, but you know a lot about other languages that you could probably be considered almost multilingual, or I don't know what's the word, polyglot.
Polyglot.
Yes, that speaks multiple languages. You could almost be considered that, but I feel like, I don't know, I think if we dumped you into a country for long enough, you would pick it up fine. You would probably become lingual in that language well enough to like exist fine.
And that happened when I was in Scandinavia. I picked up a lot of extra things and learned how to talk to people.
I think they're very nice about it up there, too. Like, they're very happy when you give it a shot.
Oh, yeah.
And because a lot of them speak English very well. Like, they learn English.
Anyone under, like, 40 to 50 there speaks English.
Yeah, the old people don't because they're old, and that's all they used to know, and that's fine. That's the way it is. But a lot of them learn English, especially because the English is sort of like the business language of the world. Yeah. So, and in a lot of the EU nations and the EU, the European zone and stuff, that English is a fairly well spoken, because the Londoners, the Englishmen have pushed it real hard, on like just like America, we pushed it real hard on everybody in empire terms.
Even though
and others.
I think French is still technically like the diplomatic language of the world, but English is definitely like, it's the business language, it's like the treaty language, it's the commonality.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I think, well, obviously, like Mandarin Chinese is number one spoken.
Yeah.
But basically, it's all concentrated in like China, basically, and a couple like outlying like islands and kind of area around there. And even in China, obviously, it's China. It's not only spoken Mandarin. Cantonese is real big. Like in Hong Kong and whatever, like Macau, the other places that are kind of close by there.
You got Taiwanese,
Chinese, which is basically Chinese, but it's Taiwan. They're like, and honestly, if you ask people from Taiwan, they would say, we're speaking Chinese. We're actually China. And they're like the traitors who are the communists, and we're the real China. That's a whole thing too. Yeah. I think the Tibetans don't speak. Some more speak, like, because a lot of like native Tibetans are not Han Chinese, like a lot of the Chinese from the eastern part. And I think they speak their own variation, which is probably almost like a mix between that and like Indian and stuff, because India is like right there on the India and Nepal and Bangladesh are all kind of like in that border region between like China and India. Yeah. It's a whole thing. Language is fucking weird and interesting. I wish I spoke
it's so
more
fun.
than English. I feel like all of us in our family had a pretty good sense of that stuff. Like when I took Japanese in high school and college, I don't remember a lot of it, and honestly, it's my fault. Like I didn't practice it. Obviously, if you don't practice it and do anything, you just lose
it.
I still remember a few things here and there. Like our other sister Rachel, she did some Japanese and stuff too. Yeah. And I picked up little bits of Spanish here and there. Spanish is super easy, so it's easy to pick up there. Little bits of German and stuff. But I feel like you picked up a lot of Swedish,
a lot of Swedish
and Danish, because Swedish and Danish are. They're intelligible to each other. They're not the same.
And it's so funny because, gosh, guys, I'm going to get on a weird language rant.
Go for it.
But when you compare languages, technically, Norwegian and Danish are more similar to each other. But the Swedes and the Danes are way more intelligible to each other, whereas the Danes and Norwegians are more intelligible to each other than the Swedes and the Norwegians.
And it's just the way that they speak the words.
Yeah.
So are those three languages like basically the same? Like, do they use the same like words for the most part, and the same script and the same like structure of
for
grammar?
For the most part,
they've just diverged a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, like Danish is.
Are they as similar as say Quebecois, like Montreal French, and France, like Parisian French? Are they that similar, or are they just a little farther off?
They're a little farther off, yeah. Especially like with the Danes.
More like Portuguese and Spanish.
Yes, yeah. It's like kind of the same and a little bit intelligible.
Enough that you'd be like, oh, it's like mostly the same words and but it's spoken very differently.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because Portugal and Spain are like right next to each other, so their language is kind of evolved in the same but like different way.
And you've got different versions of Norwegian. You've got like bokmål, which is like the standard, and then you've got like old gammalmål, which is like the old way of speaking, which is I think similar to I'm like recalling on like many years ago from a tour guide, which I think is similar to like kind of what they speak in Iceland now, which is like very close to Old Norse.
Old Norse, yeah.
But like Old Norse pretty much has nothing to do with like modern day.
I feel like of all those languages, I feel like Icelandic is the hardest one to look at. I don't know about speaking it, but to look at it is very Very difficult. Like that volcano that erupted. I remember seeing the name when it first happened. I was like, what the fuck? They just like some person just like hit the keyboard and they're like, this is the volcano. It's just right about 98 E's and V's in there and a Y, and then there's a volcano. Post. It's what this is. But it's real. I mean, obviously it's the name of it, but I'm just like, oh, I can't. I have no idea.
It's a real hard language.
Seems like it.
Haven't even tried to.
I feel like, though, it's probably similar enough to the other ones that they've diverged, but there's probably still some similarity, I'm sure. I'm sure they don't understand each other very well, but they would, like, pick up shit.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier off mic before the show, like Dutch.
Dutch, yep.
And German and English.
Yeah.
Kind of all coming from a common place.
Yeah.
So there are little, and like Afrikaans as well, because it's basically African Dutch.
South African Dutch.
Sometimes when you hear somebody speaking Afrikaans, you're like, are you just speaking like dumb idiot English? Like, or am I dumb? Because I hear every fourth or fifth word I get, and I'm like, oh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, and you read a book, and you're like,
is
this like a third grader who's like, this is English now?
I don't know how to spell.
And then they think the same thing about English. Like, what the fuck is this?
Pretty much.
That's language.
Just like bastardized.
That's language in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
I remember, and this will segue well into what we're actually going to talk about. There is, English is obviously the main language spoken in England. You know, it's named for that place.
Exactly. The Angles.
Yes, the Anglo-Saxon, the Angles in the English. And we won't get into the history of languages spoken on the Isles because they're all fucking weird and different too.
Yeah.
Irish is very strange, like
all
Gaelic,
and
it's just
Scots
like, ugh.
and the Picts
and you know,
Cornish. And
the English on that island were very different than the English that we have now, because a lot of the English now are like mixes and bastardizations between like the Norse
Germans
invaders and the French invaders, like from Normandy, like in 1066 when William the Conqueror went over and he was like, this is mine now.
Yeah.
He kind of like was like, well, these things are happening now. And like you said, just like the even from like Roman influence from back in the day when old Roman Britain and stuff, and it's like, ugh. Anyhow, that's English, but the Scots also have like a Scottish kind of English, and I'll never forget. And it's so weird because I wish I could find it again. I'm sure if I look hard enough, I could Google it and find it. But like, I was looking at a webpage one time, and it was like, choose your language. So I just looked, and it was like Scottish English. I'm like, what? So I clicked on it to read it, and it's like 95% the same as like English, but there's like weird different shit. And I'm like, what is this? And that's just like, I was like, all right, so, Scottish people have to be a little bit different than their English counterparts. And today's episode is about Agnes, and she's a Scottish lady.
Scottish lass.
She's a Scottish lass.
Scottish lass.
And she was I'll let Amber kind of start talking about it, and we'll sort of discuss it as we go along. But tell me a little bit about the origin of Agnes, the Countess of Dunbar, a little bit.
So, Agnes, the Countess of Dunbar, she was a daughter of an earl, I believe the first Earl of Moray, of the Randolph family. Just like a very patriotic Scottish woman, hard-headed, just a delight. I just think she's such a badass.
Scottish people, I was, where was I reading this earlier or heard earlier? Scottish people had like a lot of really, they couldn't get fat, and they all grew to be gigantic tall people because they ate a lot of like seafood because of the fishing, and they ate a lot of like hearty grains instead of like wimpy wheat. They had to grow like oats and bran and shit because like it's Scotland and it's Highlands and it's like rocky, crappy soil.
Yeah.
So they end up growing these really hardy, like fibrous wheats. So they're eating like this, like just like rock bread and fucking fish and sheep and stuff. So they grow into these like massive people. And the English like, you're all dumb and idiots, but like they're just pussies compared to the Scottish, who are just like these insane like warrior people. And it's like, oh. So I thought it was interesting. Anyhow. More about Agnes.
So she married, I believe it was Patrick. Oh, goodness. What was his name? He was Patrick, the 9th Earl of Dunbar in March, which is, where she ended up being. That's why she lived in the castle of Dunbar. But yeah, she...
So in her early life, Agnes pretty much didn't do
She really
anything of like real historical.
She didn't
note.
really. Yeah, she didn't really do anything of
I'm
note.
assuming she was a
daughter
badass lady because you don't just become one overnight.
Yeah,
She's probably just a bad bitch from
Yeah.
the beginning. But obviously, she didn't do anything super crazy at the beginning of life. She was, like you said, like an earl's daughter.
Yeah,
it was a
just-
marriage
yeah.
of like
she
how
was
royal
she was a
people
rich.
do.
She was a rich daughter.
Rich people
in the,
marrying other rich people. I mean, it's like
in medieval
Scotland.
times.
As far as Scotland wants to be removed from like England, because you know how we all think of England as like, oh, the queen and the king and the royal family and this, and oh, we all know the monarchs. And Scotland hates England. They don't want to fucking be like them at all.
Yeah.
They were exactly fucking like that. Like every
literally.
kingdom in Europe at that time was just like that. It was just monarchs, kings, queens,
Yep.
rich people with land marrying other rich people with land so they could all have land.
Pretty much.
And have
So
money.
everyone's rich. Everyone's a
And
duke. Everyone's an earl.
fucking,
Everyone's a countess.
inbred.
Like, oh my god.
Like the Habsburgs and their fucking massive chins from like generations of inbreeding with just dopey looking fucking chins coming out
God, that
9
massive
inches from their
underbite.
head. Teeth popping out. I'm like, oh boy, look what we've done. They're still fairly interbred these days,
Yeah.
but not as much because like it's not a big deal
Yeah.
anymore. But it's still, I mean, they
And you've got people on like the Swedish royalty
who
line
are in the
are
succession for the English throne.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh my god.
They're all fucking related to each
Mhm.
other. That's the
Yeah.
whole point. But anyhow, yeah. So she lives a life of regular, richness of the time, whatever this is, 1300s,
Whatever you
so the
would
14th.
consider luxury in the middle ages.
Yes. Which is basically just not being super poor and dying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is having enough money to have food and have people
yeah.
like do things for you.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So then what does Agnes like what leads up to why she becomes an interesting historical figure? Because we've talked about the English hating the Scots and the Scots equally hating the English, and I feel like that probably has something to do with why she's insane.
Yeah. Well, as we know, the Scottish, they're like, fuck you guys.
Yep.
We want to keep our independence.
Yep.
To the point where they had 2 Scottish wars of independence, less than 100 years apart from each other.
Against the English. Mhm.
Yep. Ireland's just over there doing whatever. Like
Ireland
suck,
is
guys.
much less successful getting their independence from England.
Yeah.
Scotland was much better at it. They still didn't succeed every time, but they were much better at being like, fuck you, buddy.
Pretty
Which
much.
is funny because Ireland's a different island, so you think like the water separating them will like help them kind of where Scotland's like, we're connected to you, so you can just like walk up here and be like, hi, we're here. We're gonna fight now. Whereas Islanders like, oh, we have like nothing over here and hang out with us. And England's like, fuck you, we're taking you anyway, and we're gonna keep Northern Ireland.
Poor
Sorry.
Wales is just there, like whatever.
Hey,
guys.
I guess we're England now. I guess we're England now. Doctor Who is filmed here.
Yes,
I
it
guess
is.
we're England now.
But yeah, so they had 2 wars of Scottish independence, which in the first war, there actually was a battle at Dunbar, which doesn't. I mean, it's noted as a battle, but nothing really came of it. One of the biggest reasons why they loved where that castle was is it was so fortified. It was right up to the sea gate. There was so much land that hid. Like there was a sea gate that flowed right up to the castle.
Yeah.
Which comes
So
in
obviously
handy
you're
later.
protected on at least one or more sides by the fucking sea.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen pictures of like the coasts of like England and Ireland, it's just like cliffs and shit that's eroded into just like
Pretty
there's
much.
no way that you can just like it's not a beach.
You can't.
You can't come up to and be like, hi, we're here. It's just like, oh, well, shit, this thing's just on a fucking, like, precipice. I guess you could get ships and maybe shoot stuff there, but this is like the 1300s. Like, you don't have fucking anything like that
Exactly.
yet.
There's catapults. That's basically
yeah,
it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, as we stated, she did marry Patrick, and he was fighting in the Second Scottish War of Independence, and he leaves one day to go fight with his country, to fight for his king, and he leaves his wife and some of her handmaids and then just a few guards to the castle.
To be in charge of the castle.
be in charge.
He probably figured that nobody was going to come knocking.
Yeah.
Because the Scottish men were trying to take the fight to the English. So they run off, do whatever you do, get together, go off and go fight whatever battle.
Pretty much.
Hey, honey, take care of the castle. It'll be fine. It's a castle. And she's probably like, okay, I guess we'll hang out here. Yeah.
Which happened back then because all of the men would go off to war and the women would be left behind.
Just to hang out.
Yeah, to take care of the manor and all that goodness. So yeah, he goes to fight. And then at this point, that's when William Montague, the first Earl of
That sounds very
Salisbury.
Everything is just. I love on this show whenever we talk about English stuff that it's always exceedingly English.
So, oh my gosh.
It has to be very British, and that's my favorite part about. I'm such a fucking Anglophile. I love England. Like, sorry, Scotland. If anybody from Scotland is listening, and you're like, "Fuck you, mate." I did an Australian accent to be even more offensive. I can't do them. I can do Australian okay. I can't really do any of the other Englishes like well enough to be like, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? Scottish is hard, but they're probably just like, fuck you, buddy. But I mean, and everything about England, like they take pride in just being like so fucking English. It's just like, and of course, the Montague Salisbury.
Salisbury.
It's just too bad he wasn't from Yorkshire. Or Sheffield, or Leicester.
Leicester.
Yeah. Even though it's spelled like Leicester. Yeah, Leicester. Things like that.
I feel like if you just say anything like with that drone, it just sounds so English.
Very
fancy.
exceedingly English.
John and Dottie. Like the Battle of Brunswick and Tweed, which is a real skirmish.
It's so funny too, like when you think of like Robin Hood being from Nottingham, and how Nottingham's a real place, and you see it, and you're like, that's real,
right?
Okay, I thought it was just some fucking weird fairy tale, but apparently it's a real thing. That where people live now, and they're just like, I'm from Nottingham. Like, really? Fucking, do you know Robin Hood? Do you know the sheriff of Nottingham? Like, all right, it's real. England's weird.
Real.
England's a weird fairy tale land. Separate from the other European fairy tale lands, like in the Czech Republic with their castles and princesses and what have you, in the Black Forest, however you say that.
Up in Germany, Schwarzwald.
Yeah. So anyhow, so you're saying she's in the castle, she's chilling.
Yep.
Husband's going out to fight.
Yep.
Another dude, now husband's gone. He comes up to call. He's the Montague from Salisbury. What's up his sleeve? What's he want?
So pretty much, he just wants that castle. He wants that land.
He just wants to take it.
It's like super fortified. It's great. He would love it in the name of the English king.
Yeah.
He's a pretty great. Gosh, you're gonna have to correct me later. I want to say that he was a general, but I'm not 100% certain. I can't remember. But I mean, he was pretty noteworthy. He had a lot of wins under his belt. He was very trusted by the king to go out and lead sieges. But
he was a guy who could win shit.
Yeah,
he was a guy when somebody wanted something done, you sent Montague because he would be able to take it for whatever, for whomever.
Yeah.
So he's coming up and he's knocking on Agnes's door.
Yep.
At this castle, which I just looked at a map of it, by the way, and it's in a really shitty part of Scotland.
Yeah,
like, why would you even want this place? I don't understand why so badly.
Right? Unless it was like a great trade route back then. Like I don't understand
that, or like it was because it was so easily defended. Maybe once you get something like that, then somebody's like, oh, we'll just have it now, and nobody can take it back.
We have your castle, we have your land, we have your earldom, we have your money.
Money.
And so it is said that he purportedly showed up with 20,000 English men, which, gosh, sometimes when you read these things, you're like, 20,000 men?
It's one of the weird parts of history, battle history, from back when things weren't recorded worth of shit, because without pictures and without like very accurate measures to check stuff, like old battles are so weird. They're like, this guy fought this guy with 100,000 people. This guy had like 50,000 people, and you're like, what? 150,000 people are just fighting each other? Like that takes up like 20 acres of land, and they were just like beating each other up. Like that sounds so fucking weird because that's just not how like things work anymore. But maybe so he rolls up with probably less than 20,000 troops, but a lot of guys,
sizable number.
A ton of dudes.
Oh yeah. So they show up and they of course, in a very English style, announce we're here, and we need you to surrender your castle and your land to the English and give up all the things.
Yep, because you're Scotland and we hate you.
Pretty much.
We're going to take your stuff. You're England now, we say. You're English vassals now.
And Agnes basically was like, fuck you. She laughed straight in their face and was like, bring it.
A lot of balls on that lady to be in this castle. And her husband leaves. Her husband, who was fighting in a war, so obviously he was like some sort of war commander himself.
Yep.
And this dude shows up with a shit ton of dudes who are ready to fight and says, hey, we're going to take your castle. And she's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Fuck you, buddy. You are not going to take our castle. Like, there's a lot of nuts on that lady.
She was 26 years old when this happened. Like,
I did a little reading beforehand, too, and I did not know she was that young.
Yes,
when
only
this
26
happened.
years old. I am a 27-year-old young women. And I don't think I could ever even imagine doing something like that.
Facing down 20,000-ish dudes who have bows and swords and shields and other implements that they've just decided to wheel up there and as well. And she's just like, fuck you. You can't do anything. What are you going to do?
Right?
So how did he respond to her basically just flipping him off and saying, fucking come at me, bro. What are you going to do?
So what he does is he just immediately is like, okay, guys, we're going to lay siege, and we're just going to start fucking catapulting them. So they just throw boulders, huge boulders at them, and it hits the walls of the castle, it hits the columns, and while this is happening, it is said that she declared, of Scotland's king, I hound my house, I pay him meat and fee, and I will keep my good old house while my house will keep me. So she's up there mocking them, which my favorite part of this, because it's just, God, it's so posh and so badass, that as this is happening and there's dust everywhere and rocks everywhere, she sends her ladies-in-waiting out there while they're catapulting boulders and they're fucking dusting off the top of the columns with their lace handkerchiefs, with their kerchiefs.
Like this cannot be like this. I must keep my home.
I must keep my home.
My husband left. I'm in charge of the house, and I have to keep it clean. Quit shooting your fucking giant rocks at my house. God damn it.
But the best part of this is that, you know, they're throwing all these boulders.
Yeah, the English are shooting boulders through catapults and I'm assuming trebuchets and other things, other implements of war, trying to literally lay siege to a massive rock castle.
Yeah. And so this goes on for a while, and then they wait, and then they cut off their food supplies. So they're like,
true classic siege.
Yep. So they're like, okay, she's got to come out.
Yep.
So she lets
them out.
She lets them get close because they're like, okay, we can go up with the sow now, which is like a battering ram.
Yeah, sow, if you don't know, is like this massive like tower type thing that you would go up to like the wall of a castle and it would be like a battering ram, but also like dudes would be in it. So like it's like almost like Trojan horsey. Like once you bust the wall open, you bust the wall open, then they come spilling out and start to do what soldiers do, which is basically just fucking kill everyone in the most terrible way possible. Yeah. So they bring the massive sow up and they try to get into the castle because I'm assuming they're like, okay, we're starving her out. We've blown up her fucking castle as much as we can. We're gonna get into this fucking thing one way or the other. Yeah. They have to be weak now. Let's fucking make our move.
So they come up, and she's like, you know what? Fuck it. Let them get close. So they come up. They're battering the walls and the ramparts. Yep. So she lets them get close. And hey, guess what they fucking threw at the castle earlier? A bunch of boulders.
A bunch of rocks that they've now newly acquired Scottish rocks. They're not English rocks anymore because they're just in her castle now. Pretty so now she's got a bunch of boulders.
Yep. And so while she does have ladies in waiting there, she still has a small group of guards. Of armed men. So she lets these guys get close. And they just throw these boulders down on these guys, wreck the sow, break it in twain.
And just, murder a bunch of English guys who are like, this will work. We're dead because there's a rock killing us.
Pretty much.
From above. Split Robin's arrow in twain.
Oh, God, such a great movie. If you've never seen Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yes.
I will say it is, yes, it's better than Princess Bride.
It's better than also the Prince of Thieves that came out at the same time that it was parodying and mocking. It is like much better of a fucking movie than that movie is.
So good.
It's so funny. Yes. So she drops boulders because she's like, well, fuck that shit. We'll somehow heave-ho all these boulders up to the edge of the castle and just like smash these idiots with their own fucking rocks that they gave me. She
kills what I imagine are hundreds of men.
Of dudes, They're dead.
So at this point, Montague has to take a moment, retreat a little bit and
try to figure out a different plan because his dumbass war plans
has been thwarted.
He is this amazing general with war knowledge, a bunch of guys, and he still can't beat this lady.
This lady
who's just like, okay,
yeah,
I guess we're gonna fight now. Go ahead and give it your best shot, you fucking dumbass. It's like, okay, fire the catapults.
So then
unleash the trebuchets.
The trebuchets.
Unleash the sow. Oh, my guys are dead. Oh shit, my guys are annihilated.
So they take some time. They kind of lay back.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine day to day they're probably sending guys out to like take stock of what's going on, maybe try to get in again.
Yeah, because they're still sieging the place.
Mm-hmm.
They're still trying to get in there, and obviously these old castles have a lot of stores in them because people would live in the castles and kind of go along on day-to-day life. You know, around the castle, obviously, there's always like farms and stuff. And then when those people are like, "Oh, we're in danger," they all run inside and hang out in the castle. So you got to have a lot of food and shit in the castle. But it's finite, so they're waiting for them to run out of that and be desperate and surrender.
And so they try to bribe one of her guards, which doesn't work because he's patriotic as fuck. Like all these Scottish
men tend to be a very Scottish, like English are exceedingly English, but these Scottish people have a lot of pride in not being English and particularly being Scottish. So they weren't, not many of them are going to give up anybody of their own kind to these dickhead English. Yes.
So he tries to bribe him, and this guy's like, sure, I'll take your money, and then just goes and tells her, like, hey, they're coming up with this sow, and hey, they're going to try to use your brother against you. So another thing that he tries after that, which, keep in mind, guys, this goes on for, 5 months?
Yeah,
6
sieges
months?
are long and arduous things.
I believe it was from the 13th of January of 1338 to the 10th of June of 1338 is how long it went on.
Quite a long time.
Quite some time. So what he does is he brings her brother and is like, okay, fuck it. I've tried all these things. I've tried being just like upfront. I'm gonna prey on her emotions. Like clearly she's a woman and has extra feelings. She's hysterical.
She's hysterical. She's got feelings. She's got hysteria. I am a superior man, and I will fucking beat this dumb woman who's still somehow so dumb she's still kicking my idiot ass so hard. Anyhow.
So what he does is he captures her brother, who is John Randolph. Almost just said Jan.
Jan Randolph.
John Randolph, the 3rd Earl of Moray, and threatened to hang him. He said, if you don't secede, if you don't give us your castle, your land, your money, we're going to hang him. And she, once again, says, fuck you. You know
This is a very game. I don't know if you watched Game of Thrones at all.
Yeah.
But this is super similar to when the Lannister army rolls up to the Tully castle. And it's like surrounded by like rivers and stuff. So like once they raise the moat, like the thing, like nobody can fucking get into it. And Jaime Lannister gets out the Blackfish's brother, who's supposed to be like the one like in charge of the kingdom or whatever, that particular house at that point. And he tells the Blackfish, he's like, hey, let us in or we're gonna kill your brother. The Blackfish is like, fuck you, I don't give a shit, and just walks off. And he's like, oh, I guess that didn't fucking work.
Pretty
so
much.
That's basically what this is.
Yeah. Like,
she's like, he's like, I'm gonna kill your brother, and she's like, I don't fucking care, dude.
She called his bluff, and she's like, you know what? Kill him. I'll get his title.
Yeah.
I'll get his earldom. I'll become, another countess of something else.
I'm just gonna get more money.
More money.
Dipshit.
Exactly. So then what he does is he's like,
very
okay,
cold-blooded.
Very much. And then he ended up not killing him.
Of course,
because
because
this was
it was
my
a
bluff.
bullshit bluff. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, this doesn't work, so he thinks about it again. And they try to storm the castle again. And she's like, okay, sweet. We're going to let them get real close. Get real close again. And what she does is she decides that she's going to bring down this wall and try to trap him in there. It's like, fuck it. I'll take Montague in myself, and I'll end this entire thing.
Yeah.
So they get close. They get real close. They're getting closer. How much closer could they be? How many times can I say close?
They're licking the wall.
They're licking the wall.
They're punching the wall, trying to get through it. They're right there.
So they get there, and one of Montague's men sees what's about to happen. He sees the wall coming down, pushes him out of the way, and she captures this one guy. So
she's like, oh, fuck.
So her plan...
Oh, fuck, mate. I've been captured, mate. Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
I can't believe you've done this.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this. Punch.
God, I miss Vine.
Everyone does.
So what she does is she's like, okay, well, my plan didn't work, but fuck, his plan didn't work either.
Yeah.
So she calls out to him. She's like, you know what? I had planned on you coming in and having supper with us and seceding, and that didn't work, so I've got one of your men now, and he's going to die.
I'm going to murder him. And he's like, oh, shit. Oh, I hate that this happened like this. I don't like this at all. I hate this.
So it's getting towards the end, and finally he's like, you know, Agnes, like, this has got to stop. You've got to be starving by now. We've cut off your food supplies. We've cut off everything else that you would need, like, to tend to any of your people. Well, it turns out that great fortification and that great seaway that just floods right up into the castle is, like, you can't see it with all the land that comes up. I think it comes up over 200 feet.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and
tumultuous North Sea.
Sir Alexander Ramsay had been sneaking food and supplies in. So what she did,
so the siege wasn't working worth shit at all.
Not at all. They're just fucking living it up like they always have.
To have a good siege, you have to cut off all supply lines, and if you're not cutting off even one supply line, then your siege has failed, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, they 100% just fucked that up.
Yep.
And so what she did was the day after this, she had fresh bread and wine come in, and then came out and offered it to Montague and all of his men, saying, like, hey, you guys must be hungry. You must be starving. Like,
we're not.
We're not.
We're
Have
not.
some bread and some wine.
Like, oh, shit, mate. She's got it. We've been doing this shit for like 4 months, and she just has fucking bread and wine to spare to give
right?
us.
For real. So at this point, they're seceding because it's taken so long. It's taken 5 months, and I think it has cost nearly 6,000 British pounds, which I don't even know what that would be in today's money.
Like $8 gajillion fucking dollars. Way too much fucking money.
Way too much.
Yeah. For this whole dumb little castle.
The king's like, what the fuck? You're one of my best guys.
What are you
Why
doing?
is this taking so long?
She's a hysterical lady. What are you
what
doing?
are you doing?
What are you fucking doing, dude? God damn.
So finally, they gave up, and it was done. They marched away with their tails between their legs, and that was that. And she lived for many more years. I think she lived until 57
57 it looks like. So she went
in
for
the
another lifetime worth of time after that. Just, you know.
In the 1400s, that's a long fucking lifespan.
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Probably pretty typical for a rich person who could, you know, not die of some stupid disease or, you know, die of exposure or lack of food and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think I was reading too that some of the Scottish people who had went off to war heard wind of this and came back and were like, "Fuck you, buddy."
Yeah.
And he's like, this is bullshit. Like, I can't fucking stay sieging this.
Yeah.
And fight off all these guys. I have to fucking.
And they came back by ship, not by land. They came back by ship and were like, "Okay, like we're here.
We're gonna fight now.
This needs to fucking end."
And so it did. So it did. A lady named Agnes decided to defend her castle. When her husband decided to go away on war, because the Scottish were always fighting the British, even to this day, maybe not in punchy, fighty, stabby terms, but they still don't like each other all that much.
No.
I know when Brexit happened, many of the Scottish people were like, we're not going to do that because we want to stay in the EU. And the English were like, we're going to leave. And they're like, if you do that, we're going to fucking secede from you, you dipshits, and then rejoin the EU on our own. And it's like, oh, what do we do? The Scottish people hate the English people, and I think the feeling is probably mutual, usually going back and forth. And so this lady, a proud Scottish lass, decides to say, fuck you to the English, a guy who is going to fight her and kill her and her people. She was like, I don't give a fuck about that, and just dropped rocks on them, dusted off her fucking things with kerchiefs with her handmaidens, taunted them, and just said crazy shit to them to the point where the guy was just like, I can't fucking fight this lady, this hysterical woman. And then he just leaves.
Yep.
Pretty good tale.
Pretty
badass. Good.
Yep.
Pretty good. And I think we've been now going for nearly an hour just doing that. I think I will cut it off here, and we'll end the episode now. You can find the podcast on any podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, all of the ones. If you have a podcast app that finds podcasts, you can search Knowledge from the Couch podcast, and you can find mine. You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Steinhauser. You can find the show's Twitter at The Couch Pod. You can find us on Facebook, search Knowledge from the Couch podcast, and join me there. That's where I post when all the episodes are new and stuff, and occasional things otherwise. You should check out the Patreon. The person sitting across from me talking that you've heard for the last hour is one of my patrons. I promise I'll get you the patron gifts here at some point when I figure it out. But if you do decide to give the show a little bit of money, I will give you some stuff, and you will have a clean conscience knowing that I gave you many hours of my life, and you gave me $5. So if you would like to do that, please go to patreon.com/Kyle has a podcast, and you will find the page for it there. I swear I will start posting on that as well. I just have been very busy lately with work and the whatnot to do that, because as I stated at the top of the podcast, this is something I don't get paid for. I just do it for fun.
Yep.
So sometimes when other things in life happen and priorities exist, you have to choose between the two of them. So tell everyone about yourself, and then we'll get out of here.
Alrighty, well, you can find me on Instagram at Amber N. Steinhauser.
Yep.
Post about baking and other things,
Yep.
Renaissance fairs,
Right.
all of that goodness.
Things about Ren fairs, things about baking stuff. You have a blog as well, correct?
I do. Gosh, it has been so long, I believe.
Perhaps you should start posting on that blog again.
Gosh,
and
I really should.
If even 2 or 3 people from this show decide to check you out, maybe
I
you'll
believe
get some
it
new
is
readers.
rollinginthebutter.blogspot.com, which
Mhm.
there is a link on the top of my Instagram in the bio.
Mm-hmm. And I will post that in the show notes and all that stuff too,
Yep.
so you'll be able to find all of this stuff there as well.
Yep.
So yes,
I'm on Facebook. Don't find me. 'Cause
Don't at her there.
I won't friend you.
yeah,
'cause
you
I
can
am
at friend her
very
there, and she will
unsociable.
decline. You can find me on Facebook. I will friend you. I don't care, but also don't do that. I don't give a shit. So just find the Facebook page. We're all there anyway. You'll
Yep,
see
pretty much.
that stuff sort of happening. Anything else you like to let the world know about?
No, seems about it.
Seems about it, yeah. I think this one won't be the longest podcast I've ever done. If you can believe it, I've talked to myself and by myself for even longer than this episode, but it is fun to just go back and forth. Because in the end, you know, this story of Agnes really isn't that long of a story.
Yeah.
But we were able to kind of come out a little bit.
Stretch it out a little.
Stretch it out, yeah. We were able to make content. So I hope you all enjoyed this first endeavor into the dual podcast
Yes.
world. Next week, I'm going to have my buddy Aaron on the show. He is, you know him if you've seen me share stuff on Facebook. He does his own sort of video cast where he just, you know, hangs out usually with his son, and they talk about like movies and action stuff as, you know, a way for Aaron to have something fun to do with his kid and stuff. But I've actually been on his show now 4 different times. We were on a mashup of the show that I do here in his show. Then we did, basically after that, we did like a version of his show where we just talked about the stuff we're into, because I have a quite nerdy persona outside of this as well. So I like to get into all the same stuff that he's into. And then we did a couple more like with his kids, and we did another episode of his show just with me and him. So he'll be on later on, so you've seen his face and you've heard him speak, and now you'll hear the dulcet tones in podcast land with the audio quality therein on my show. So we will have him on later on. And if you are a person who I know, or even if I don't know you, but probably somebody I know, if you would like to be on the show, and we'll have you back on whenever you want to be back on, let me know. Contact me through any of the ways that I've noted. And if you would like to come over to my humble abode and speak into a microphone across from me and have a fun time and have a couple of brewskis with me while we do it, you are more than welcome to. I'd love to have other people on. Obviously, I'll continue to do it on my own in the time that I don't have guests. But if you'd like to come on and talk about something or shoot the shit and can say something that maybe you think people will find interesting or even not, go ahead and let me know and come over and we will do it. Otherwise, guys, thanks for listening to episode 49 of the Knowledge from the Couch podcast. I hope, sincerely, that you live long and prosper. The end.
Bye, guys.
Bye.